Hi, welcome to HR Nightmares. This is the YouTube channel / podcast where HR experts get together and talk about all the stuff that we would have put in that salacious book that we're never going to write. And we'd prefer to just get on this podcast and yap it up. So I'm Lisa Leath.
I'm Amy Conway.
And we have special guest Madison Bradburn with us.
Hello.
Madison,
Welcome.
yes. Well, I'm so excited that Madison's here. I've known Madison for a couple of years now, and she is a professional talent acquisition specialist and has been working in HR for many years. And so we're really excited to kind of dive into all the HR nightmares that people are having with recruiting these days. There's just, that's where we spend a good majority of our time right now with clients. Everybody's having issues finding people. Wow. We hear it all the time. But also, there's some HR nightmares on the candidate front, people being no-shows, people putting their current work emails on resumes, all kinds of fun, good stuff that we can just dole out some tips and tricks today.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to talking to Madison.
Yeah, it's a good topic to have you here for.
So Madison Bradburn is originally, I love the town that you are from. It's in the middle of Iowa. Maybe not the middle, but it's called Okoboji.
Okoboji, yeah.
Did I do it right?
Yes.
Okay.
Northwest corner, Minnesota, South Dakota. That's where I get my accent from. Everybody always makes fun of me for it.
I don't feel like you have an accent.
People say I say bag weird.
Certain words.
Bag. I say bag. I don't know.
I'll be paying attention to that now.
Very
Let's try to get her to
twang.
say bag several times
Yeah.
during this
Northerner.
podcast.
Yeah, that's me.
So tell us about you. Tell us about your professional career and who you are as a person.
I feel so official. You even asked me this question, and I just feel like I feel like I've made it. I feel like I've arrived.
Because you're on the HR Nightmares podcast.
Yes.
You've arrived.
Yeah.
I have
Welcome.
arrived. So like you said, I grew up in Iowa. I moved to Wilmington about 7 years ago. Love it out here. I graduated college. I have a degree in psychology, actually.
You need that to be in HR.
I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I thought at one point I wanted to be a counselor and do therapy. And then I took a class doing that. And I was like, hell no, I can't do that. That's not for me. But I was like, what do I want to do? I really love working with people. I love talking with people. And then I just kind of fell into recruiting at first. And then I got into some other gigs and it led me right back into recruiting. So here I am today, years later. I love the people aspect. And I don't think recruiters really realize that you do for real change lives.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people that I've extended offers to that are like, you found me and I wasn't looking for anything and I've taken this opportunity now and it has been the best decision I've made. And it's kind of a cool, rewarding thing to be a part of that process, right? So, yeah.
How many lives have you changed?
God, I don't even know. Countless. I feel so special.
Do you know what, though? You said something that, for anybody who's thinking about getting into a career in HR and maybe doesn't have didn't have the fortune of what Amy and I did, kind of growing up through the ranks with a company for many, many years and kind of getting that progressive experience. If you are a great conversationalist and you are a smart person with a level of business acumen where you can kind of pick up on the nuances of different jobs and what the business is all about and kind of be a great salesperson for the company too, recruiting can be a good job. Now, it gets increasingly hard. When you start working on senior level positions and very technical positions, that's definitely not for everybody. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what a day in the life of Madison is like? What kind of jobs are you recruiting for, and what's kind of your what's your angle when you go after different candidates?
So that's a great question. I think I've done it all up to this point. I used to be an agency recruiter, which means that I didn't get paid unless I actually filled a spot. And now I'm in corporate recruiting, which means that the candidate, or not the candidates, but the jobs are given to me, and then I find the candidates, and I get paid no matter what, right?
And you have a new child, so that's pretty important.
Yeah. The agency recruiting and balancing a child was very, very difficult. I will say it's a lot of grind. It's a lot of selling. It's getting up every day, making copious amounts of phone calls and talking with all sorts of different kinds of people. Some really great and some just not so much.
Yeah.
But I would say the day in the life, I I wake up, I check my requisitions, I see what new jobs have come in, what ones are aging now at that, and then I just start talking to candidates against whatever job I have open. The sourcing part is where it gets very interesting. I wouldn't call myself a subject matter expert regarding the jobs that I actually fill. I think I'm more of a generalist when it comes to that. I know enough to be dangerous to talk to people about the roles, but I don't necessarily live a day in the life of those people that fill those roles, right? So my conversations really are centered around, does this person have the personality to fit in with the culture of the company? Do they, check the big boxes of, hey, do they have X amount of years of experience? Do they, can they answer these few questions that I have ready to go for them? If they pass those things, then I send those over to our hiring manager and have a conversation about their resume, about how they've kind of interacted with me, and if they'd like to go ahead and set up an interview. So, and then I take it from there too. After the interview process is completed, we move them forward to the offer, and that's a whole nother bucket of fun, right? So that's going through, what expectations does the candidate have that, we possibly need to meet, and, vice versa. So it's a fun process.
I'm curious, so for those that might be listening that are on the job search or thinking about looking for a different career, different job within the same industry, you see dozens and dozens of resumes every week. Give us a couple of things that you see that candidates need to change in order to get seen by you.
Yeah.
Right?
Or if you just automatically trash a resume, why?
Yeah. And we do some recruiting things too. And, it's newer to me. That's obviously was not my main role in my former HR life. And as I'm doing these, I'm shocked at some of the resumes. I mean, I got a 9-page resume the other day.
I mean, they did a lot.
Unbelievable.
They're pretty important.
They've got a lot to tell you, apparently. I think one thing, that I've heard this since I was fresh out of college, is that your resume really doesn't get read. And I never thought that to be true until I am in this seat now. I will take a look at your headers, and I'll look at the times that you've been in that role. Red flags for me are if you have been in your role for less than 6 months and you continually are doing that throughout your entire career. That's a huge red flag. Another red flag is if you have a billion different jobs underneath. I think there's a really good rule. Don't post more than maybe 5 to 10 years of experience on your resume, because I'm not going back further than that. If you have the title and some of the characteristics, that are maybe in our job description listed in your resume, I'm going to go ahead and have a conversation with you, at least to figure out if you are a potential match. But if you don't have some of those things, probably not going to look at you.
Yeah, and I've been looking at a lot of very senior level C-suite resumes lately. And you don't need to put 20, 25 years worth of job experience. That's when you get into the 5, 6, 7 pages.
Yeah.
I'm like, I would assume you can use Microsoft Word at this point in your career. So leave it off. So
just take it off. Not necessary. Another thing too, I've noticed when people apply into, especially at a big corporation, when people are applying into a particular job posting, some people aren't even including their resume. Include that. That is so important. That is your number one thing that is going to market you.
They're not even attaching it to the job. They're applying but not attaching.
Yeah.
Can I tell one of my gripes? I really hate these objectives at the top of resumes. I don't want to hear that you are an enthusiastic, overachieving, fast-paced, stop.
Yeah. Well,
I don't care.
I don't know what I was listening to or reading recently, but that was a recommendation of kind of the modern resume of getting rid of that objective. And if you do have something, it's more just a one sentence, who you are, what you're what role you're in. It's like a one sentence kind of just introduction to you.
Yeah, it's
But
not.
yeah.
That's great, but I'm going to get that out of a conversation.
Right.
You don't need to tell me you're outgoing or that you're personable or whatever. I'll figure that out when I talk with you.
One thing I do kind of like, though, is if people are a little bit creative in their header. They use kind of first person sentence that explains. It's like a baby bio at the top. Hey, I've been in HR for 15
Yes.
years. I'm a my strengths finders is I'm a maximizer.
Yes.
I'm a D on the disc wheel. Like, tell me a little bit something that wouldn't normally show up on your resume that kind of gives me a more well-rounded picture of
Right.
who you might be as a professional.
Versus just a bunch of buzzwords that
Yes.
all mean I'm a strategic, highly
Yeah.
dynamic.
I'm so strategic. Yes.
And if you are strategic and if you are dynamic, put those in some of your deliverables,
Correct.
right? Put those
Yeah.
in a bullet point below some of your achievements, that you've had throughout your tenure in X business or whatever. That's way more valuable, I think, than, to your point, Lisa, including it in bubbly, I want to wrap myself up in a little bow type of a statement at the top.
You mentioned screening for culture. So talk to us. I mean, our clients, the great part about our clients love culture and they love talking about culture. And that's why they're growing so fast. Most of them is from the leadership down. They truly believe whatever their culture is, they've articulated it and they can talk about it succinctly in an interview process. And that starts with the very first time that a recruiter reaches out. And that starts the candidate experience, right? So how do you screen for culture in that very first conversation? Like, what are some great questions that listeners out there could ask to make sure that people aren't brilliant jerks walking into their organization?
Yeah. One thing, and I don't have like a box full of magic questions that I ask people. I just go off of feel, truthfully. I know that's probably not the right answer I'm looking for.
That's like a corporate HR risk person's nightmare.
But I truly do just have conversations. And if a question pops into my mind, I certainly ask it. But more or less how you conduct yourself through a conversation. Are you interrupting me all the time? Are you
I love that one.
Are you when you talk about some of your past experiences, do I feel this heavy shadow following it? Are you attributing some of your downfalls to maybe other people, playing into you? Or are you just saying, hey, it is what it is, and this is what happened? Are you speaking poorly about your last employer? There are a lot of things that come up just in conversation if you allow people the time to speak and to just, it's like a river. People love to talk about themselves, and sometimes they talk themselves into a little bit of a hole, and that's fine because that tells me exactly, who you are and maybe what we don't want you to bring to our organization.
Right,
you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I handle the culture fit is I just let people talk, which may or may not be the key.
Yeah. And I suppose what, I think about, it's so hard in an interview because the candidate is supposed to be talking about themselves. They're supposed to be telling us things about themselves. But there is a fine line of the way in which they do it that kind of shows, do they leave space for other people to also contribute? I had a candidate, recently, and I don't know that I said much of anything in 30 minutes, right? And I almost had to interject and kind of continually cut them off so that I could get them to move to a different subject. So I think it's just, it tells you a lot.
Hire them?
No. Well, not yet, but no. But yeah, I think that if you leave them that space, they kind of show you a lot of their skills and competencies just in that ability for even them to listen or ask you questions or engage in different ways. So.
I will say for leadership roles, so if it's a higher level role that's going to have an impact on a greater level, right? Having a direct team of individuals that they're having report up to them, I will say asking questions about their management style and or, how have you led through change, I think are super important because inevitably this person will have to do some of those things, and if they're able to give good examples, that's always a telltale sign that, okay, great, you have done this before and you do kind of know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And also just the way that they answer the question too, through that conversation. How are they presenting that information? Is it a we or is it an I? You know, how are they coming back with that info? I think is super important too, and valuable for those particular levels of roles, I think.
Yeah. I'm really curious for all of those of our listeners who are the hiring managers and may work with recruiters or maybe have internal recruiters like you and their company. What are the ways that you find what's the best way to partner with your recruiter? If you were the hiring manager, how can you utilize someone like you the best?
Yeah. I think building a relationship is key all the way around. I think hiring managers with their recruiters, recruiters with the candidates, candidates with the hiring managers, it's like a nice little triangle of success. I think that if you have nothing else other than just like factual information, people can't pick up on the subtle nuances of A, what it's like to work on your team, B, what it's like to work for that company, and why. Why should I come over, you know, to a candidate's perspective, or even just a hiring manager and a recruiter. Oftentimes recruiters are working multiple different roles across different business units and or, you know, different functions within the like one smaller organization, doesn't matter, but there's just a plethora of different roles that they're probably working up against. And I think having a relationship with the hiring manager to be able to pick up, like I said, on those subtle nuances to understand what's it like working on your team, what's it like working in this role, and tell me more about yourself, tell me about everything. I want to know everything. I'm like a little sponge. So when I start working a new role.
That's good. That's a good recruiter.
Because you can't effectively sell this role to a candidate if you don't have that perspective, right? So that's, I think, the number one thing that's the most important. Working with a recruiter, recruiters with candidates, and candidates with their hiring managers.
Yeah.
Too.
It's hard. It's hard when you're recruiting too, because you're trying to maintain the integrity of the candidate experience. You're trying to work for the business and meet the needs of the hiring managers and whatever we've got. And usually they're two different timelines, and you've got to kind of be that person to both sides. So yeah, it can be a challenging role.
Hiring managers have a responsibility to aid in your success, though. And I think a lot of times we, as HR folks or talent acquisition professionals, need to remind hiring managers with some frequency on what our expectations are in return to them. And so it's things like, hey, put that little purple hashtag hiring around your face on LinkedIn. It's share all of my job postings and don't just share them and say, join my team, it's great.
Right.
Say something about the role. Say something in your own words that would make me want to work for you.
Right.
Any other examples of like how hiring managers might be able to help the process? I mean, their goal is to get the right person in the right seat quickly.
Right.
How do we do that? I can't do it on my own. I need your help. Any other suggestions for hiring managers to help you?
Getting involved with your local community is huge, huge, especially if you have a university locally. Go talk to some of the students there. I mean, I know maybe some of the roles that you're recruiting against aren't going to be entry level, which is fine, but these kids are going to grow up, right? You're going to have people that are entering the workforce and that a year or two down the road might want to come work for your company.
Right.
It's not necessarily about the openings that you have now either. It's about the openings that you could see down the road. Recruiting is a revolving door.
Right.
You're never, ever, ever going to stop recruiting if you're a leader or have an organization. That's never going to be like, you're never going to be at the end of the road.
Right.
Never
It's like we
stop
don't
closing.
We
That's
don't
right.
only recruit when we have open jobs. We recruit every single day of the year for our company. Yeah.
And that's, I think, something that hiring managers sometimes lose sight of, right? That, I've filled a role, moving on, time to train. I know it's a lot of work. I know that recruiting isn't at the front of everybody's mind all of the time. And it shouldn't have to be all the time, but I think certainly, taking your foot completely off the gas is a mistake. I think that having, active conversations with your chamber, active conversations with kids, in the universities, networking as much as possible, getting out to different events, telling people why, your organization is the best. And because you all, I hope, believe that, right? That you do work for the best organization and whatever you do. And so just, like I said, tooting your own horn to other individuals, make it sexy.
Make
Make it sexy.
Recruiting is sexy.
We have these purple curtains behind us now, so I'm feeling you.
But yeah, I think it's true. I mean, I worked for a company for many years where, as a leader, when I asked my managers, why aren't you staffed? Why don't you have enough people to service the customer? They'd be like, well, HR didn't give me any candidates and blah, blah, blah. And that's what they would say to me. And I'm like, that's not HR's role. They're here. They're going to phone screen. They're going to onboard. They're going to help you with this process. But what did you do this week to provide candidates? So it's like, yeah, everyone's got to be in it and always looking for potential talent in a very unselfish way. So maybe you don't have an opening on your team, but this is someone great for the organization.
Right.
So it's very much like put your org hat on, and I'm sure we have a job for a great person.
And also, internally having sort of a plan, right? Like, don't just find these people and then leave them, lay and be like, oh, I'd love to have a conversation with you, and then leave it at that, right? Internally, you should have some sort of plan to what you're going to do with those people. I know having like an Excel spreadsheet of individuals that you've been in contact with that have their email addresses, their phone numbers, the date of last contact, what they might be a good fit for, and sharing that information along with your leaders, your peers, whoever in the organization, and having a, bi-monthly, quarterly call even just to say, what do we got in the pipeline, folks?
Right.
How can we utilize this talent? Because there is talent out there, and it's always too late once you have your job posting.
Yeah.
Because they could have already had an offer, or they could have had something else on the table. But if you're courting them, if you're having relationships built before you're posting, they're more likely to come over than you do.
So you made a good point. You just said something in there on timeline. Like, do you have good parameters and advice out there for both candidates and employers on what right now kind of the average timeline? I mean, we're in this phase right now where there's 10 million open jobs in the U.S. Everyone's resigning. 40% of people or 60% of people are either unhappy or they're looking for another job. So right now it's like an employee market, not an employer market. So how do you try to manage that? Because sometimes that process moves too slow, sometimes too fast. Like,
it's so hard. Let me just tell you, today, it is like we're referring it to as a war on talent, because that's exactly what it is. It is a war zone out there. If you're talking with a qualified candidate, it is likely they're talking with 2 or 3 other companies and could potentially have an offer on the table tomorrow. So if you found somebody, right, that you've interviewed and they're good and they're checking your boxes, they might not have like blown you away, but they're good, right?
They may not be the unicorn, that's going to transform your company, which seems to be what we're looking for all the time.
All the time.
Yes, all the time. The purple squirrel with the unicorn horn.
Right,
and all
right,
that. Yeah. But if they're good, I mean, I think it's conversation. It's back to that relationship.
Yeah.
What is the candidate's expectation? You should be asking the question, who else are you interviewing? Do you have any other offers? What's your timeline? What does that look like for you? Because it does. It varies so much between candidate and candidate. There's no like blanket statement. But I will say that if you're letting something linger for 30 days, they're gone.
Right.
1,000%. They're gone. I can say that with certainty.
A week is even a little bit
If you have gone through the interview process and you're done, right? You should have a decision to that candidate within 48 hours.
Right.
Should. Does that always happen? No. I understand that we can't. If you have like 5 candidates in your final candidate pool, I understand there's sometimes scheduling issues, to get that second round interview wrapped up and whatnot. But having the conversation with the candidate to let them know and set expectations as to what the timeline looks like, giving them feedback, real time as much as possible. I think that's all that anybody can ever hope for. And I think as long as the expectation is set with your candidates, then I think, they're more willing to listen and maybe hang tight.
Yeah.
But if you're not giving feedback and you're waiting for, it's just not
touching base.
Yeah, it's really hard. I totally understand as a recruiter. I'm like, I wish I had a decision for you. I do not.
Yes.
Let me get an update. Yep. But I was like,
hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's like keeping them active in the process. I've had that conversation with clients of ours many times. Like, we either need to schedule a second interview and keep them active, or we need to just decline them.
Right.
Because if you don't want to schedule a second interview, obviously have a great amount of like hesitation, and it's almost like the same as dating, right? They're just keeping them in the pool
Yeah.
in case they become single again, right? I always think about
I don't
it like
want to
that.
be alone on Friday.
I'm like, yeah, stop breadcrumbing me.
breadcrumbing me.
That's hilarious. Well, the same thing goes. So when you're ready to make an offer to a candidate, right? And you make that offer, and the candidate's like, "Oh, give me a week."
You're like,
Mhm.
You're
You're floundering, right?
Yeah.
They're floundering for a reason. They probably have another offer on the table. They're
We're
not fully
waiting on the offer
invested.
they really want.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
Same thing goes for hiring manager.
Yep.
If you're floundering and you can't make a decision, it's probably a no.
Yeah, it's yes or
Right.
no.
And so let's just go ahead and cut that cord, or let's pipeline them. Let's just say, hey, listen, you interviewed really well. I don't think you're a perfect fit for this role, but I'd love to keep in conversations with you for maybe some other openings that we've got.
Absolutely. That's
And then
the
put them on that
perfect response.
little spreadsheet that you've got
Yeah.
in your pocket or your whatever folder on your computer.
But then
And-
they appreciate the fact that you
Yes.
at least had the wherewithal to be thinking about them for another role.
Right.
That they wouldn't be happy in that role. Everyone wants to be successful, especially
That's
when
right.
they leave a stable job to go to a new job and work with a whole new team. Like, I love that you tell them that. And I have found when I tell candidates that, they are typically very thankful and become text buddies, or like reach out 2, 3, 4 weeks later and say, hey, just touch a base. Got anything for me in
Yeah.
the Raleigh area
Yeah.
or Jacksonville or whatever. So I wanted to go back to something that you said about the war on talent. I feel like, especially because we work with a lot of small and mid-sized clients at Leath HR, I feel like the war on talent could be, if you got your employer branding articulation really in the right spot as a smaller mid-sized company, I feel like the war on talent could be good for small and mid-sized businesses, because they are not these giant conglomerations of Fortune 500 companies that it takes an act of Congress to, get a new policy through, or if we want to have flexible work arrangements forever and ever, amen, like we got to have the employment attorney and the entire HR function, wherever in Seattle or wherever.
Lots of red tape.
New York City, there's so much red tape. And so the ability to make decisions quickly, flex to what the employees really want and desire to make it a great place to work, having a relationship with the senior leader of the company, like a actual personal first name, get to know you kind of relationship. Those are all things that people are vying for right now, is just to be treated human at their place of work. And so I think there might be an opportunity for small and mid-sized businesses that are listening to be thinking about, why can we win this war on talent compared to the big guys, where I think about just like the large employers in our town, the Verizons or GEs or other companies that used to be the go-to employers. And now they really have to, they're struggling because they are more rigid in the way that they treat employees, where some of the small and mid-sized groups have gotten kind of with 2022.
Yeah.
So-
Well, even rigid, I mean, I think I can think of examples just recently, like even rigid and just pay. I think of like things we do as Leath HR Group with our smaller and mid-sized businesses that we, if someone comes to us or, we're in that business and they're like, hey, I got another offer for 10 grand more, like we can work with that person versus the corporation I was employed at. Like we were like, we wish you the best of luck.
Yeah.
We wish we could do that. But if we did that, then we'd have to do it for the 500
all
other
other-
people in
yeah.
that job title, and we can't do that. So I do agree with you, Lisa. I think there's small and mid-sized businesses can actually speak to that a little bit more in their employment branding than they really do.
Yeah.
The agility, I think, is very nice, because it can be an act of Congress sometimes in a larger corporation to even do the smallest things.
So you do a giant lift in outreach, sourcing, finding the talent, giving them a great experience, getting the offer negotiated. Okay, now boom, they're starting. Talk to us about any kind of situations that you've had where the hiring manager maybe wasn't ready for the person. How did that go?
I hate those situations.
I know,
because
they're
it's
HR
like,
nightmares.
Yes. We package these people up, and they're ready and they're excited and they're happy and they've made this decision and we've brought them to the finish line, and it's like they're greeted in like the driest of deserts and there's no water and there's nothing like that. is like the most, it just like really makes me mad when that happens.
Also, you're going to be recruiting again in about 30 days for that job.
100%. And then at that point, you feel like everything that you've told this candidate has been a lie.
Right.
And that doesn't feel good because
No.
I think I was talking to Amy earlier. You are a person that takes ownership with things. And
Yes.
I am the exact same way. I am like, this was my fault.
Right.
Like, I should have
take it all on.
I feel terrible, right? Having a really well put together onboarding program, not even from just like, hey, let's get your desk ready, right? That's small fish in comparison.
However,
But like
some people don't have the computers ready or the sign-ins or the Wi-Fi password.
Having all of that set up, having a plan, have a checklist.
Yeah.
For the love of God, please have a checklist of things that you need to have prepared prior to that person's first day of work. Because nothing says welcome home than a desk not being prepared or a computer not being there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really sad.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some good questions about recruiting that kind of go along with what we were just talking about. Of that being
Absolutely.
prepared.
Let's
Is that what
get
you were
into it.
prepping us for?
Let's do it. Yeah, it was just like hardening your skin so you
leading
could
us
just
into this.
be tortured here. So every episode we get some write-ins from the audience, and they're usually pretty interesting, and they are only getting better and
They've
like more
been, like,
complicated.
I'm rolling up my sleeves.
Roll
Like,
them
I'm
up,
so-
girl.
They're going to test your HR skills. I mean, lately the questions have been really intense, really multi-layered.
Yes. So we'll break them down as best as we possibly can.
Yeah.
But this is like a team effort, okay?
Okay.
So wipe the brow. Okay. So there was one that was somewhat related to recruiting here, and I think this would be a good one for Madison. So I'm a small business owner who also wears the hat of HR. I'm doing all the hirings for our business, and the last 3 people I have hired have not shown up on day 1. That's actually happening all the
It's
time.
unbelievable to
And
me.
I have a few ideas why, but they have been great in the interviews, real go-getters, which that's kind of hard to tell in an interview,
Yeah.
but let's talk about that in a second. Then not show up. Starting dates are communicated and accepted by both parties. I try to touch base right before they start. That's good. We have great benefits for a small business, have competitive pay for our industry and size of our business. Benefits start day 1.
That's great.
Wow.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
good. Okay, now I'm confused. If you show up and we are still having issues with people, I'm not sure what that means.
I think
but
it means
what
like
do we
we're
need?
showing up as a business.
Yeah,
for
we're
these
showing
candidates,
up. We're still
but
having
yeah.
people.
Mhm.
We're still having trouble. What do we need to be doing better? It has been pretty frustrating and exhausting. Please help.
This
please
is from
help.
a business owner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hard.
You've seen this a little bit in some of the clients you've been working with, right? This like no show, no call, no show for job. I haven't experienced as much of it.
So what is crazy is when you get down to like the last business day before a director is supposed to show up, a director in like healthcare. I'm thinking of one specific example. And calls you at like 4 p.m. the Friday before and says, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be able to do that because of whether it's like a non-compete or non-solicitation. It's like, well, these are pretty standard terms for someone at your level. Now, if it is a no-show, like I had like a project coordinator a year ago not show up at a technology company and and they like disappeared off the planet.
Right, like ghosted.
I even
Didn't
tried
call.
to track them down through like a friend of a friend on Facebook.
I
And
hope they're okay, but
same. But then she posted some things.
okay,
so
she's fine.
yeah, it was like, she's alive. So that was good. But I wonder if it's something to do with like the person they're going to be working for, or is it the actual company?
I mean,
what's the vibe out there on the street as it relates to like, what does your Glassdoor say about you? What is your Indeed stars? Do you have bad reviews?
I think too, it kind of depends. You know, we don't know that from the details in the question, but I would say, to me, I'm curious what like job level we're hiring. Are these entry level, hourly roles? Because that I see like that's pretty common. Are they management roles? Are they more senior level? So I think depending on the role is probably where some of the diagnosis of problem comes in. because I could see it happening a little bit more entry level. I think what's more rare is that they just kind of no call, no show, right?
Yeah, no
so
show.
I had recently someone, in the end, they didn't start, but they sent me an email, called me, gave me feedback, and they just accepted another offer in the meantime. And that's what's happening a lot. But that failure to even
So actually, let's go back to that situation. I know what you're talking about. And what I would say, I'd be curious if this person, this small business owner, is waiting 3, 4, 5 weeks to start a new hire. It really doesn't matter what level in the organization they are. If people are ready and raring to go and feeling excited and like jazzed about this new job, and then you're like, okay, well, you're taking a vacation in a month. Well, let's just start you after that vacation.
No.
Well, guess what? I've already got, like Madison said, 3 other people courting me and making me offers. And I'm going to take the one that's going to start me next week so that I can pay my family's bills and feed my kids and get, I'm jazzed right now. I'm jazzed to start tomorrow.
Yeah,
next
I
week,
would say
2
you're
weeks,
right.
whatever.
Like candidate start date, especially, I mean, I understand and can appreciate everyone wanting to give notice, but if they're available and currently not working, get them in there when they want to start. And if that means, you offered them a job on Tuesday and they can start Monday, like, go ahead, move. What are we waiting for?
Right.
We knew we were hiring. I mean, I was offered the job at Nordstrom at 4 p.m. on Monday, and they said, hey, we have new hire orientation tomorrow morning starting at 9 a.m. Can you be here? I didn't even live in the same town as where I was starting my first Nordstrom store, but you know what I said? Yes, I can be there, because they were like, the next new hire orientation isn't for 3 more weeks, and we don't want to wait that long.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, okay, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, and neither did
Packed
you.
up some stuff, got in my car, drove.
I know there are circumstances in which an organization might need to run like a background check. And I know from experience currently that a lot of courthouses are COVID impacted. Like they're taking a long time to get some of those done. In which case, there's probably a waiver that you can sign. You can have somebody do that. I don't know that that's the case in this particular scenario, but I will say though, if you do find yourself in that type of a situation, right? Like let's maybe see if we can get a waiver signed to start earlier, or if it's truly like, hey, you have to wait until this is done. Make sure that you're doing regular check-ins. Are there other activities that this person can be involved in, such as maybe some team meetings, or like, can you bring them into the office and do orientation? Just like to say like, hey, come in, not informal, like, but like, hey, here's some things that you could be a part of if you want to on a voluntarily basis. Like, let's just, I don't know, get creative.
Yeah.
But keep these people engaged. Like,
I agree. And I'm going to guess, I mean, more than likely, they accepted what's happening here is probably they accepted another job.
Yes.
And I don't know. I don't want to generalize any kind. The market is changing too as we have new generations into the workforce. That professional maturity and acumen is a little bit different. So I don't want to make assumptions, but we have to know that too as business owners and leaders, that we've got to flex our expectations too a little bit on some of that stuff and know that this may happen more often in the future.
Yeah.
But I think that the message here is if this person's listening, they probably need to call us, give us more information, and let us help them. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think there's 2 things that if they were to call us that I would say, hey, let's take a look at these 2 things. The first thing that I would take a look at is, no kidding, where are they finding these applicants?
Yes.
Okay. How are they choosing the ones that they do choose to interview? And then once they bring them in, what is the interview process? Who's meeting them?
What's the process?
Are they the only person, this office manager, are they the only person meeting the candidates? That's not good, probably. You probably want some team members, people that are going to work with the person to also meet them. And then also they said they're paying well. I got to believe they probably are because their benefits start day one. I think that's really good.
That's great.
But like, have you done the data digging? Do you actually know that you pay well? And then what's your employer brand online? It's going back to what's your reputation? How are you managing your reputation? What are those campaigns that you've got going on social media?
For sure.
If the same person's entering, are you a good picker, right? Maybe it's that business owner. Maybe they're I like everyone. I say yes to everyone. And that happens. It's not a bad thing. It's just you can't be the one making all the hiring decisions if that's your personality.
You can meet them and tell them how great the company is.
I want to give everyone a job. That's great. You're no longer in charge of making our hiring decisions, right?
Yes. Let somebody else do the choosing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to do another one?
Sure.
All right. see. Let's give Amy like a really fun one.
One of these
Okay,
are
let's
like
do
really
the retail.
brutal.
Let's do
okay, I can
retail.
do that
Okay,
one.
because Amy's
I read
background
these.
is many years of retail. Okay, I started my first job after college last year in retail. I worked at the Gap. That was my first job.
Yeah?
The day I turned 16, I went and got a job at the Gap.
I used to work at Abercrombie.
Oh, did you watch the
Abercrombie.
net? Okay, we
I
can't get into
did.
that. I'm sorry.
I
We'll
watched
talk
it for like
offline.
a second. And I was
yeah.
like, I feel so lucky, but
So
also no.
bad.
You
So
smelled
bad.
good.
Terrible.
Oh my gosh, that place
They
smelled
fixed
good.
a lot of that, but
I hope so.
I had a great onboarding experience. The first couple of months were great. Recently, I've noticed a bias. Our owner is male and most of the employees are female. I've noticed he pays extra attention to certain staff members over others. It did not bother me until I was denied PTO and two of the other ladies I work with just got back from a 2-week vacation. I'm a good employee. I'm never late. I do my work and leave. I have a feeling it's because I never stick around to have small talk with the owner. I have no idea what to do, and we do not have an official HR department. Do I stay and address this, or do I quit? I have a career goal to work my way up in the retail industry. Any advice you can offer is wonderful. Thank you.
I love the go-getter attitude.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like, I have a goal.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Well,
that goal.
if you're listening, you should connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll help you with your retail career. And I also know a really great and probably better retailer that you can work for that has a store right up the road, a couple hours in Raleigh. But it's hard. I firmly believe that in order to develop your professional skills, and if you want to move on and be a leader and have a great career, now is a great time to learn the competency of courage and having a direct and a candid conversation. I always believe that it's better to speak up and do so in a professional way and see if those concerns get addressed and give a business owner, a retail owner, whoever, the opportunity to address the problems. And then if you still don't see changes, then I think it's time to move on because they hate to tell you there's a lot of other retailers you could go work for. Yeah. So
every
you've got
retailer
options.
is looking for
every
help.
single retailer in America is hiring.
Every retailer.
I can
Pick
guarantee
the retailer
it.
you want to work for.
Who do you want to work for? They've got a job for you.
Yes.
The only other thing that I would say, it's a little bit of a different twist on this, is it doesn't matter if you're in retail or any other industry. There is a level of like political savvy that goes with moving your way up the chain. So if you have aspirations to become a leader in the retail industry, just like any other industry, you're going to have to like hobnob with some people that maybe you don't want to rub elbows with or spend a couple extra minutes having small talk with. But if they like talking about Corvettes, or if they like talking about fishing the Gulf Stream, or if they like talking about musicals in New York City, sometimes you might have to go do a little research on fishing in the Gulf Stream and hang with the person for 5 or 10 minutes. And you know what? Building that rapport can go a hell of a long way.
Yeah.
It's not like you're, kissing their butts per se to like get ahead, but at the same time, you're making personal connections.
You're building rapport.
You're building rapport.
One thing I have always been told since I was a kid is it's not what you know sometimes, it's who you know. And that has never rung more true, I think, as I grow in my career, right? It's not necessarily the job that I do every single day, but I do a good job. I do. It's truly who you know and who can help mentor you and who can bring you into those circles or elevate you in the direction that you want to go. And if the people around you are not serving you in that way and not supporting you and helping you grow and thrive, it's time. It's time.
Yeah, and I think it's how you approach that conversation with that retail owner. Maybe the approach is, I want to learn from you. I want to understand this business. I want to do these things. But I do notice that I'm treated a little bit differently, and I want to know why, because I'd like to figure that out because I want to be successful here. So it's really like how you approach those conversations.
Yeah. And if I was like to just play the owners, like I'm thinking about putting myself in his shoes, and I'd be like, well, Amy, you clock in and you clock out. You're out of here at 5 p.m. I never knew that from you because you don't really stick around to talk to anybody.
Right.
So you're kind of, to me, it seems like you're a clock puncher, and this is just a job. It's an hourly job. You're in, you're out. I've never heard you tell me about your aspirations to be a retail juggernaut.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Juggernaut. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but the word choice. But so I think ultimately, without knowing all the details of this one again, I think you have a conversation. I think don't just throw in the towel before you give things the opportunity to improve, because it's really easy to do that. And I think a lot of people, that is what they do because they're afraid to have a
Absolutely.
conversation. But, now's
Especially
the
if
perfect
you
time
like
to
the
learn how
clothes
to
and
do
you
it.
get a discount.
Yeah,
It was
that's a good
fun.
perk.
It was worth it for a really long time.
But hey, listen, I think too, if it is, you do have that conversation. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself either.
Mhm.
Know your worth. Know your worth, because like
True that.
Lisa and Amy
Yeah.
both said, there are a lot of other
Yeah.
retailers out there that maybe will be able to take you to the next
Yeah.
level
Yeah.
if this organization's not.
Right.
Right. So I'm all for having conversations and being transparent, being upfront.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Yeah.
I feel like people don't do that enough.
Yeah.
But if you've already had that conversation
And you don't see any change,
yeah.
then it's time to move on. Yeah. For sure.
All right. Well, thanks
All
to everybody who
right.
did write in. We only got to 2 questions, but we'll try to get to some others in future episodes. So thank you, everyone. I want to thank Madison Bradburn for being here
Thank you
today.
guys for
This
So
is
having
fun
me.
to have
awesome.
you.
This is really fun.
Talking about recruiting.
I can
And-
die happy now, you guys.
Oh,
I've been
Madison's
on a podcast.
made it.
come back anytime. Well, I'm Lisa Leath, and I'll let Amy do the signing off.
Oh, me? All
Yeah.
right. Well, connect with us on LinkedIn. You can find any of us out there posting constantly. Follow us at Leath HR on LinkedIn. Follow us on Instagram at Leath HR. And, come follow us over on YouTube. You can watch this. You can listen to it anywhere where you get your podcasts, and click that bell on YouTube, click that follow button. You get notified each week as new episodes air. And yeah,
That's my girl.
That's what I got. That's what I got. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.